This lesson is about population dynamics. And let's start by talking about distribution of a population. One of the ways that we can distribute is in a clumped population. Notice these zebras here. They're clumped, and look at how those lines make it difficult to differentiate one from the other. This is one kind of distribution, clumped, and often prey species will be clumped. A predator species will often be evenly spread over an area, so you'd have just one or two in a large area, and then they would spread out. And if you think about that for the zebras, they're not really competing for food with each other. There's plenty of food. It's all around them. So they're clumped together, whereas these animals are competing for food and they need a lot of food to support their needs. And so they have to be evenly spread out to get enough food resources. And so depending on if you are prey or predator, that's going to determine whether you're going to be clumped together or evenly spread out. Then the amount of resources that you need and what kind of resources that you need are going to determine whether you are spread out. So if we're looking at a large area here, and in our population, we might see that the prey species find themselves in clumps here around water holes and food sources and things like that. And these clumps might be moving around, but still in clumps. Then the predator species might be only 3 of them in the same area, and they're spread out to get at the food resources that move around. And if you think back to the previous discussions about energy, there have to be a lot more of the prey species to support the predator species, as so much of the energy is lost as it moves up the food chain. But what I want to talk to you here about is population density, and the population density is the number of individuals per area. It's going to be in meters squared for something small like mice, or it's going to be a number of individuals per kilometer squared, say for something big like zebras or large predators here. And we're just looking at the number in an area in a square meter, and that number then is the density of individuals divided by the area. You can see why it would be important then to do things like mark and recapture or tag them to know the individuals, because these boundaries here that they live in are not hard and fast. Some individuals are going to leave those, and some different ones are going to come in. And so we're looking at an average over a set of time. Now let's talk about what might change these. And there's usually really 4 rates that we talk about. We have the birth rate and the death rate, and these influence survival. And then we have emigration and immigration. These often get confused, and these really relate to whether they should stay or whether they should go. And so in our population up here, if we have zebras moving out into a new location, it is emigrated from here and immigrated into a new location here. So you emigrate from a place and you immigrate into a place. And why might they be doing that? Let's think about why they might be doing that. Well, they're going to emigrate from a place if they are low on food and they are running out of food in that location, or they are not finding a mate. They're going to go somewhere else where they can find a mate, or there are too many predators. And so they have to leave to get away from the predators, and they're going to immigrate into a place for just the opposite, to find food, to find a mate, to find shelter, to find water, and so on. The same reasons humans emigrate and immigrate to go find work, to find a livelihood. These are the 4 things that will affect the population density. The population density will go up or go down as more individuals are born. So birth rate isn't just how fast they are born, though, but then how many are surviving. We don't really care how many are born. It's also how many survive long enough to have offspring of their own. And the death rate then is the rate at which they are dying, of course. And this is certainly influenced by things like food and shelter and water and predators. These are going to be highly variable depending on the conditions around them. And in response to those conditions, they might choose to emigrate or immigrate. Now, I don't want to confuse dispersal with migration. So let's talk about dispersal or spreading, which is different from distribution. Distribution was whether they were clumped or not, and how they were spread out in a location in a certain population with a certain population density. For dispersal, sometimes we could use the word range. Let's look at this cardinal here in the United States. Here's a very rough map of the United States. In the United States, the cardinal used to spend its winters with a dispersal like this, or a range, to use that word. In the summers, it would expand northward, and so its dispersal and its spread during the summer months was the whole continental U.S., and during the winter months, it went south. Well, this bird has modified its behavior and shifted its dispersal, or its spreading, and it is spread so that now in the summer and in the winter it stays in the northern climates, and some stay in the southern climates all year. It has spread its dispersal into bigger permanent range and stopped migrating south for the winter. This happened because people started setting out bird feeders, and the cardinals adapted their behavior now that there was enough food available in the wintertime. And it was frankly easier for them to stay in the northern climates when the snow came and get food from the bird feeder than it was to spend all that energy flying south for the winter. And so they changed their range and their dispersal spread over a larger area of the United States. Now let's talk about how this differs from migration. Migration is a seasonal movement. Many birds move south for the wintertime. The cardinal used to do that, as we've just seen. It's often for climate or weather, like cold weather, but it's also for other seasonal changes. The wildebeest here are migrating in Africa, not for winter and summer, but for the dry season and the rainy season. And they're following the water. And so migration is a seasonal change, but they're not spreading their habitat or their range. They start in a location, they move back to a new location, and then when the season changes back, they go back to their original location from their secondary location. And so their range or their dispersal would be this here, just it would be seasonal. Hawks also do this in Minnesota. We have another crude map here. Here's Lake Superior and the arrowhead of Minnesota. Here's Wisconsin, and here's Minnesota and the hawks. They spend winters up in this region up here above Lake Superior. Now, they don't like to fly across Lake Superior, and so they migrate down along the coast through the town of Duluth, along an area called Hawk Ridge. That is a bluff that has good thermals and updrafts. The hawks can soar, and they get through this bottleneck here, and then they spread out all throughout the lower part of the continent for their wintering, and then back in the summer. They don't have to go over the Great Lakes, and so they're forced to go back through Hawk Ridge, and then they spread out up into Canada and wherever else they want to go north of the Great Lakes. So that's the difference between migration and distribution and dispersal.